Hi, my name is Justin with Ascend Finance. Today, we're going to cover Chapter 13 bankruptcy in Alabama. Now, what percentage of Chapter 13 bankruptcy do you think ends successfully? For example, get you actually out of the debt? Only 38.8%. Why? Because it's often related to cost and many other variables. So here's what we'll cover in this video. For one, a quick Chapter 13 bankruptcy introduction. Next, I'm going to touch on your monthly Chapter 13 plan payment. Third, the Chapter 13 bankruptcy costs in Alabama. Fourth, the Chapter 13 bankruptcy process in Alabama. Fifth, Chapter 13 bankruptcy pros and cons. And finally, Chapter 13 bankruptcy alternatives. Before we begin, please understand a Chapter 13 bankruptcy in Alabama is complex. Feel free to ask a question or comment below and we'll do our best to respond as quickly as possible. Also, please like the video if you enjoyed, as they're always encouraging to me. So let's cover a quick introduction. What is Chapter 13 bankruptcy? Chapter 13 bankruptcy is known as the wage earners plan because it allows individuals with a regular income to pay back some or all of their debts. The Chapter 13 bankruptcy plan is a monthly payment for often 3 or 5 years. People like Chapter 13 bankruptcy because it can stop wage garnishment, foreclosure, and provide protection from creditors. One of the most important things to understand is the affordability of your Chapter 13 monthly plan payment in a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, specifically in Alabama. Basically, how much do you have to pay each month and how many years of the plan? The reason that your Chapter 13 plan payment is so important is that it may actually be more expensive than your current debt obligations. That said, it could also be less expensive. It really depends. So we got this question so often that we actually built a free Chapter 13 bankruptcy calculator based on the actual bankruptcy forms. You can estimate your Chapter 13 plan payment based on your zip code using the Alabama Chapter 13 calculator in the notes below. Now, let's discuss how your Chapter 13 plan payment works in Alabama, the various costs and fees, the Chapter 13 bankruptcy process in Alabama, the pros and cons, and the alternatives. So second, your Chapter 13 plan payment in Alabama. Let's talk about your Chapter 13 plan payment in Alabama. There are various factors of what goes into your Chapter 13 plan payment. First is the disposable income. The amount of your income you have each month after subtracting allowable payroll deductions and the allowable living expenses from your gross monthly income. On the government means testing website, you can find the local standards for Alabama for housing, utilities, and transportation. Now, regards to assets. In some cases, the value of your assets could increase the amount of your Chapter 13 plan payment if your assets have a large amount of non-exempt equity. For example, if you own your own home with a great deal of equity above the Alabama bankruptcy exemptions, your Chapter 13 plan payment could be much higher. Third, debts. So some debts must be paid in full through a Chapter 13 plan payment. For instance, priority unsecured debts such as taxes, alimony, child support, administration costs, etc. Other creditors may receive partial payments, including unsecured debts such as medical bills, credit card debt, personal loan debt. Chapter 13 plans typically include back mortgage payments and car loan payments. Finally, some recent financial transactions. Some recent financial transactions could impact your Chapter 13 plan. Duration is also a really important thing to consider into a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. One question is, are you eligible for a 3 or 5 year plan? Your average monthly income compared to an Alabama median income guideline is used to help determine whether you qualify for a 3-year or 5-year Chapter 13 bankruptcy case in Alabama. Below, and as well right here, is the median income guidelines for Alabama for cases filed after May 15, 2021. You can check the government's means testing website for up-to-date data as it changes every 6 months. Now the bankruptcy fees. We're going to touch on the Chapter 13 bankruptcy fees in Alabama. The main fees to consider in an Alabama bankruptcy is the Chapter 13 bankruptcy attorney fee, trustee fee, filing fees, bankruptcy courses, and the miscellaneous costs. The Chapter 13 calculator below also accounts for these fees. Let's cover the fees one by one. First, attorney fees. The Chapter 13 bankruptcy attorney fee in Alabama is estimated between $3,500 to $4,500. The fee may depend on district, so a Chapter 13 attorney fee may be different from Birmingham compared to Montgomery, depending on the district. Now, trustee fees. The Chapter 13 trustee fees is another cost in a Chapter 13 plan payment. A Chapter 13 bankruptcy is often a 3 or 5 year plan, so there are many administration tasks for the Chapter 13 bankruptcy trustee. Here's a breakdown of Alabama Chapter 13 bankruptcy trustee fees, which is between 5.85% to 7.34%. Not necessarily covered by the current trustee program. Just as a reference, this can result in thousands of dollars in trustee fees. Now, finally, the filing fee. The bankruptcy filing fee for a Chapter 13 case is around $313. The fee is paid to the bankruptcy court. This fee is a national fee and not specific to Alabama. There are miscellaneous fees such as bankruptcy courses and getting to court. So let's now cover the Chapter 13 bankruptcy process. The process is important to understanding when filing bankruptcy. So here are some questions to consider in the process to file. First, understand the different types of bankruptcies. So most folks will file a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, but it's important to know the differences. Chapter 7 is often cheaper and provides faster debt relief, but each has its own pros and cons. Second, understand which debts will be eliminated. Many unsecured debts are eliminated in a Chapter 13, but it's good to understand which ones are and which are not. Third, estimate your Chapter 13 bankruptcy plan payment. It's good to get an idea of what your 13 could look like for you specifically. 4, understand alternatives to filing Chapter 13 bankruptcy. The main alternatives to Chapter 13 bankruptcy are Chapter 7, debt settlement, debt management, and debt payoff planning. 5, determine whether to hire a Chapter 13 bankruptcy attorney to file bankruptcy. 6, take a credit counseling course. 7, file bankruptcy petition and other forms. 8, a Chapter 13 bankruptcy trustee is assigned to your bankruptcy filing. 9, attend the Chapter 13 bankruptcy court meetings. 10, take a second mandatory debt education course. 11, continue to make your Chapter 13 monthly plan payments. And 12, you'll receive your bankruptcy discharge. As you can see, there's a whole slew of steps in the process, but some of the processes are just understanding whether you'd like to file bankruptcy or not. The 5th, let's go over the Chapter 13 bankruptcy pros and cons. We'll first cover the pros and cons, First pro is it can prevent foreclosure so that you can keep your home by catching up with the past due mortgage payments over 3 to 5 years. Another pro, it can stop wage garnishments, seizures, levies, or any debt collection lawsuits. Pro, it can stop creditor harassment. Another pro, it can stop wage garnishments I was saying before. You may also get a discharge on a second mortgage through a Chapter 13. Another pro, you may be able to pay less than what you owe to satisfy the secured lien on your vehicle. Another pro, catch up on past due child support and alimony. Another pro could be getting rid of unsecured debts for pennies on the dollar. You may be able to resolve tax debts and IRS problems. And finally, another pro would be that you can protect property from being sold to pay the debts. Now, let's cover the downsides. One con is the cost of the Chapter 13 bankruptcy can sometimes be expensive. And it's often 3 or 5 years. It can have a negative impact on your credit score, and it can reflect negatively on your credit report as well. 2 other cons are, first, low payment flexibility. It may have a difficulty variability of what your payment would look like. And finally, your monthly plan payment can increase if your income increases. Now we have an idea of the pros and cons. I want to jump into Chapter 13 bankruptcy alternatives. So now let's cover the common Chapter 13 bankruptcy alternatives in this video here. So first, let's cover Chapter 7 bankruptcy. So Chapter 7 bankruptcy is often the least expensive option and the fastest form of debt relief. You can get rid of debt relief in as little as 120 days, and there's no Chapter 13 trustee, and the attorney fee is also a lot less expensive because the cases are less complex. Many people file a Chapter 7 when they qualify and are not at risk of losing any belongings in the bankruptcy. Second, let's cover debt settlement. So Debt settlement is where a company or you negotiate and settle debt with your creditors. The goal is to reduce the payment burden of all your debt by around 50%, which will help lower your monthly payment, thus providing debt relief. There are definitely pros and cons of debt settlement, so definitely do your research. Third, let's cover debt management. Debt management is often where a nonprofit credit counseling agency negotiates the interest rate on your current debt. They may negotiate a high interest credit card on a 25% interest rate down to 9%. The goal is to reduce your monthly payment. You may also be on a 3 or 5 year payment plan. I hope this video has been helpful in your understanding of filing a Chapter 13 bankruptcy. You can visit the Chapter 13 bankruptcy calculator below to estimate your planned payment. Did you learn anything, something new from this video? Please click the subscribe button, as we're going to put more and more videos out to hopefully help you make the most informed decision. Now, I'd like to turn it over to you. What are some questions you have about filing Chapter 13 bankruptcy? Please comment below, and I'll do my best to respond as quickly as possible. Thanks for watching.